The gate agent looked at my grandmother the way people look at a lost umbrella. She was sitting in a plastic chair at Gate 14 of the Louisville Regional Airport, a woman who had not left Harlan County in 31 years, wearing her good wool coat, the charcoal one she kept in the cedar closet. Her suitcase, the small green one with the broken wheel she dragged with her good hip, was wedged between her feet like she was afraid someone would take it. It was 41 degrees inside that terminal. The heating vent was broken. She had a boarding pass for a flight she did not understand, to a city she had never visited, to stay with a cousin she had last seen at a funeral in 1987. And she did not know that the farm, the 240 acres of ridgetop land her late husband McClellan had cleared by hand, had already been listed. She had already been sold. My name is Rowan Birch. I found out what my parents had done at 9:47 in the morning on a Tuesday in February, and by noon I had already quit apologizing for them. Welcome to Family Revenge Stories New. I'm going to tell you a story about what happens when the people who are supposed to protect someone choose convenience instead, and what happens when someone doesn't. If that's the kind of story you need today, subscribe before we go any further. Justice takes a while to arrive here, but it arrives. I am a licensed land surveyor. I work alone mostly. I drive a 2009 Ram 1500 with 190,000 miles on it, and a transit level bolted into a custom mount in the truck bed. I have never asked my parents for money. I have never needed to. What I have is modest and mine. A 2-bedroom house outside Corbin, a shop I built on the weekends over 2 summers, a savings account that doesn't embarrass me. My grandmother's name was Luella Mae Birch, née Combs. She was 79. She made cornbread in a cast-iron skillet that was older than my mother. She called me Ro. She was the only person in my family who ever came to watch me walk at graduation, because she was the only one who remembered I was graduating. My parents, Denny and Vonda Birch, had been managing Luella's affairs since my grandfather died in 2014. Managing is the word they used. What they meant was controlling her checkbook, deciding which doctor she saw, deciding which decisions she was capable of making. They visited on holidays. They called on birthdays. They told anyone who asked that they were very devoted. I visited every 3rd Sunday. I brought supplies. I fixed her porch railing. I ate whatever she cooked and thanked her specifically, not generically. She always set the table with a cloth, even when it was just the 2 of us. She said a bare table was a sad thing. The call came in January. My mother Vonda, with her particular voice, that bright pressured cheerfulness she used when she needed something. There was going to be a family meeting, she said. A dinner, actually. At the house in Middlesboro. To talk about Luella's future. Luella would be there. Everyone was on the same page, she said. She used that phrase twice. Same page. I should have asked whose page. The conditions arrived in a follow-up text, because Vonda has always understood that texts are harder to argue with than voices. Dress nicely. Don't bring up the property. Let the adults talk first. By adults, she meant herself and my father, who was 62 and had not held a job since the Toyota plant outsourced his department in 2018. I noticed that Luella was not CC'd on any of this. I went anyway. I went because Luella called me separately that afternoon and said, in her particular way, soft, without inflection, the way she said everything that mattered most, "Ro, I think I'm going to need someone in my corner at this dinner." I should have understood then how clearly she already saw what was happening. The drive to Middlesboro took 90 minutes. I stopped at the gas station outside Pineville and bought a bag of hard candy, the kind Luella liked, the old-fashioned striped ones in the cellophane bag, and put them in my coat pocket. Foreshadowing, I didn't know I was writing. Vonda had made pot roast. The kind she always made for company, with the baby carrots arranged in a ring, the kind that looks like effort and requires almost none. The table was set without a cloth. I noticed that. I don't think Luella missed it either. Dinner lasted 20 minutes before my father unrolled the paper. It was a real estate listing. Already prepared. Already printed on glossy paper from an agency in Harlan. The farm address across the top. The acreage. The price. $1.1 million. The listing date. The following Monday. My grandmother's hands went still on either side of her plate. My father said they'd done the research. My mother said it was the right time for the market. My father said Luella couldn't manage the property anymore. My mother said the assisted living facility in Lexington was beautiful. My father said they'd already put down a deposit on a unit. Luella said, "No one asked me." My mother said, "Mama, we talked about this." They had not talked about it. I know because Luella told me 3 days earlier she had heard nothing about any of this. Luella said, "That farm is my home." My father said the farm was a liability. I said, "She has the right to refuse a sale." The table went quiet. My Uncle Merritt, my father's younger brother, who had driven up from Barberville, who had said nothing this entire meal, looked at his fork. My mother said, "Rowan, you were asked not to bring this up." I said, "You asked me not to bring up the property. You didn't ask me not to defend a person's legal rights." My father's voice went up in that way it does, that specific frequency. He said I had always been difficult. He said I had no idea what they'd sacrificed. He said if I couldn't be supportive I could leave. I looked at my grandmother. She was looking at me. She did not look afraid. She looked like a woman waiting for a confirmation she already suspected was coming. I said, "Grandma, do you want to leave?" She picked up her purse from the back of her chair. She said, "I've been wanting to leave for an hour." I carried her green suitcase, the one with the broken wheel. She had packed it before dinner. That's the detail that stays with me. She had already known. Merritt almost said something as we passed. I saw his mouth open. Then he looked at his brother and it closed. We drove 2 hours back to Corbin. Luella slept most of the way. When she woke up she said, "Thank you, Ro." Then she said, "Don't apologize for them. It wastes your time." I never did. She lived with me for 7 months. I converted my office into her bedroom. Bought a hospital-grade mattress for $340 from a medical supply place in London, Kentucky. Installed grab bars in the bathroom over a Saturday. Her prescriptions cost me $214 a month, her blood pressure medication, her thyroid pill, her aspirin. I didn't mention any of this to my parents. It wasn't meant for them to know. The farm listing went live the Monday after the dinner. My parents called twice that first week. Vonda left a voicemail explaining that Luella would be much happier somewhere with proper supervision. Denny left one saying there was a room still available in Lexington. I did not return either call. Luella adapted faster than I expected. She took her morning coffee at the kitchen table with a view of my back field. Just under 2 acres, mostly scrub pine, nothing valuable. And she seemed to find it restful. She started baking again. The 3rd week she made stack cake, the old kind with dried apple filling that had to soak overnight. It took her 2 days. My house smelled like brown sugar and would smoke for a week. She kept a small tin on the kitchen counter. Tobacco tin, the old flat kind, dark green with gold lettering, Prince Albert brand. She'd had it as long as I could remember. She moved it from the counter to the windowsill to the counter again. She never opened it in front of me. I assumed it was keepsakes. I didn't ask. My parents filed for emergency guardianship in March. The petition claimed Luella was incapacitated. It listed her age, her medications, one incident from 2021 in which she had apparently left her stove on overnight. I hired an attorney named Greta Hollis out of Lexington, $275 an hour, and we answered the petition within 72 hours. Luella's doctor submitted a cognitive evaluation. She scored in the 92nd percentile for her age group. Her words when Greta showed her the score. "Tell them I said thank you for the compliment." The farm had not yet sold. The listing was still active. My parents had reduced the price twice. If you're watching this and you don't know how the story ends, subscribe. Don't let the rest of it find you somewhere else. The next part is where everything turns and you'll want to be here for it. The tin sat on the windowsill through April and May. I noticed Luella move it once when I came into the kitchen unexpectedly. She set it back down slowly, deliberately, the way you set something down when you want a person to think you weren't holding it. In May, she taught me to make her cornbread. Not from a recipe, she didn't use one. She poured by feel, by the sound of the batter, by the way the skillet received the mix. She said her mother taught her. Said her mother's mother taught her mother. She stood beside me and corrected my wrist angle. She said, "The skillet has to be hot first or the crust won't set." Took me 4 tries to get it right. When I did, she said, "There. Just that. There." She died on a Thursday morning in June. Quietly, in the room that used to be my office. Her heart had been failing slowly for years. Her cardiologist had told us both in April that we were in the final corridor. She knew. She had been at peace with it in a way I found both devastating and instructive. The tin was on the nightstand. The meeting was held in the offices of Greta Hollis, 2 weeks after the funeral, on a Tuesday morning in July. My parents arrived together. Merritt came separately, looking like a man who had not slept well in a month. There was a notary. There was a second attorney I didn't recognize, a woman named Patricia Aldrich, who it turned out my parents had retained. There was Greta. And there was me. Greta distributed the document without preamble. It was Luella May Birch's will, updated and notarized on the 14th of October, 4 months before the dinner in Middlesbrough, 7 months before she died. The farm, all 240 acres of ridgetop land, the house, the outbuildings, the mineral rights, the timber rights, was left entirely to me. The total appraised value was $1.4 million. My father's chair scraped back from the table. He said something I won't repeat. My mother began to cry in the way she cried at funerals, performatively, with her hand pressed to her sternum. Merritt's face changed in a specific way. Not grief. Something closer to recognition. Like a man seeing the answer to a question he'd been afraid to ask. Greta continued. The will also included a personal letter from Luella, which was read aloud at Luella's instruction. I will not give you all of it. But one line was this. I did not forget what was done to me at that dinner table. And I did not forget who was sitting on my side of it. Patricia Aldrich tried to raise a challenge. She cited a clause in my grandparents' original property agreement that she said required spousal consent for any major transfer. Greta placed a single document on the table. The original deed, transferred into Luella's sole name in 1987, 7 years before my grandfather died. Luella had done it herself, quietly, with an attorney in Harlan, after a conversation with McClellan that was apparently very brief and very clear. The deed they'd planned to use to sell the farm was the instrument that proved she had always owned it alone. I opened the tin then. I'd carried it from the house. Inside was a letter from her attorney, a receipt for the notarization, a small folded photograph of my grandmother and grandfather standing in the front field of the farm, young, squinting into the sun, and a single piece of paper in her handwriting that said, "Roe, the skillet is in the box marked kitchen. Don't store it in the cabinet. Hang it. A skillet that doesn't hang is a skillet that warps." Luella. I set the tin in the center of the table. I said, "She told me once that a bare table was a sad thing. She always used a cloth." No one said anything. I said, "She was right." The guardianship petition was dismissed in August. My parents' attorney withdrew it without prejudice, which was the polite legal way of saying there was no case and everyone knew it. My parents filed a will contest in September. I gave them 60 days to withdraw it. I told them through Greta in writing that if they withdrew, I would not pursue the legal fees they had cost me, approximately $18,400 at that point. It was the only offer I made. They did not withdraw. The contest was heard in November. The judge asked my mother's attorney to explain the basis for the claim of undue influence. The attorney cited the fact that Luella had been living with me for the final months of her life. The judge noted that the will had been updated 4 months before Luella came to live with me, and asked whether counsel had anything further. Counsel did not. The will stood. The farm is mine. My parents have not contacted me since November. Merritt sent a card at Christmas. No message inside. Just his name. I took that for what it was and left the door open accordingly. Danny and Vonda lost approximately $60,000 in legal fees. They still live in Middlesbrough. I drive up to the farm on weekends now. I'm having the house assessed, some foundation work needed, and the porch railing is soft in 2 places. I know how to fix the railing. Luella watched me do it before. The cast iron skillet is hanging on a hook beside the stove in the farmhouse kitchen. I've cooked cornbread in it twice. The second time the crust set right. She told me to hang it. I hung it. What we lose, we don't always lose. Sometimes it was already waiting for us in a room we didn't know to enter. If you have an older person in your life who is being managed instead of listened to, check on them today. Not tomorrow. Call, visit, ask a real question and wait for the real answer. That's the whole instruction. If this story found you at the right moment, share it with someone who needs it. Leave a comment. Subscribe so the next one finds you too. I'll see you in the next one.